So for today, I will discuss with you the labor organization and wages. And in this topic, there are three subtopics, which are the unionism and the contributions of labor unions. The second one is the unfair labor practices. The third one is collective bargaining and goals and purposes. So I will just discuss the two subtopics of this topic, and then the rest of the subtopics will be discussed with my group mates. So let's talk about the unionism and the contribution of labor unions. So what is unionism? It is any set of political principles based on the idea that two or more political or national units should be joined or remain together. The policies and practices of labor unions, particularly those concerned with protecting and furthering the rights of workers. So unionism, it is the way or it is the political principle. When we say political principle, it is the policies that protects or practices the concern to the rights of workers. So let's proceed to the contributions of labor unions. So a labor union is an organization formed by workers in a particular trade, industry, or company for the purpose of improving pay, benefits, and working conditions. Officially known as a labor organization and also called a trade union or a workers union. A union selects representative to negotiate with employees in a process known as collective bargaining. So when we say labor union, it is the organization which is the target or the people that are in with this are the workers who are particularly protecting by the unionism. And then unions have a substantial impact of the compensation and work lives of both unionized and non-unionized workers. So they play pivotal role with securing legislated labor protections. So when we say unions or when we say the labor unions, it is the beneficiary of protecting the workers. It is the beneficiary of protecting the unionized or the non-unionized workers. So it is important, no, even in the national. So labor unions have a democratic structure, holding elections to choose officers who are charged with making decisions that are beneficial to the members. So of course, when we say selecting or electing officers, it is important that the officers that in charge on that position, it is beneficial to all the members who are voted on it. So employees pay dues to the union, and in return, the labor union acts as an advocate on the employee's behalf. Labor unions are often industry-specific and tend to be most common today among public sector or what we call government. So employees and those in transportation and utilities. So it is important not just in employees, but the target of this is the labor. So the employees are the target of this situation. So the National Education Association or what we call NEA is the one who represent teachers and other education professionals and is the largest labor union in the United States with nearly 3 billion members too. So the NEE has a 3 million members, but it is fit into the teachers. It is the represents the teachers, which are the education professionals. So it represents public school teachers, substitute teachers, higher education faculty members, education support workers, administrators, retired teachers, and students working to become teachers. So it is a good way, it is a good path to take off, especially to all the professions that nearly come on it, no? So The NEA works with local and state educational systems to set adequate wages and working conditions for its members, among other activities. So let's proceed to the second subtopic of labor organizations and wages. The second one is unit labor practices. So when we say in the word unfair, no, so it is the unequal, no, unequal practices, no. So it is a labor practices unfair, so refers to actions which violate relevant employment legislation regarding transgression carried out by any employer or a union. So it unfair labor practices, it is an action who violate relevant employment legislation. So it carried out it carried out with employer or union. So unfair labor practices is an action, as I said a while ago, by an employer or an union that violates the National Labor Relations Act. So it is the action that one employer or one union violates, or what the other words of violates, like they don't go on the path, in the right path, in the National Labor Relations Act. Like nisupak sila sa dala, no, nisupak sila sa law, nisupak sila sa balaod. So there is a practices, there is a law of that para mutabang sa sitwasyon. So examples of prohibited conduct by a union, it includes restraining or coercing the employer or employees in exercising the right provided by the NLRA, no. So when we say NLRA, it is the National Labor Relations Act, no. So causing the employer to discriminate against employees. So refusing to bargain in good faith, inducing strikes for forbidden reasons such as secondary boycotts, forcing the employer to make certain work assignments. So and NLA is on act on that. So forcing the employer to bargain with uncertified union, charging excessive initiation fees, forcing or attempting force employers to pay for workers the employer does not need, forcing or attempting to force employers to pay for work that is not or will not be done. So those are the examples of the prohibited conduct that will allow or will also help us to have a knowledge about it. So NLRA is very important, especially to the employees and employers, no. So unfair labor practices is an act committed by an employer or labor organization that compromises the constitutional rights of workers to self-organization is considered an unfair labor practices. Like for example, about this, di ba, ni dagan na kay example, dagan na kang state na example sa taas, that forcing or attempting to force employers to pay for workers the employer does not need. So those are the example of unfair labor practices. So it will protect those examples para sa mga workers. So the spirit of the law seeks to help Filipino workers to improve their working conditions. Thus, anything that proves to be disadvantageous to employers and employees alike is considered to the states wish to foster healthy and stable relation between labor and management. It is important man good na a good relationship ang laborer and the management, so that the result sa company or the result sa field nga you are in is stable siya, so that anang pabor pod sa laborer o pabor pod sa management that you are in, so that unfair labor practices, it will help magud to mode that you will be knowledgeable to practice all the NRLA no act. So unfair labor practices, the NL the NLRA prohibits the following. Unions cannot coerce workers into joining the union or staying in it. Number two, unions cannot start strike for issues unrelated to the terms and conditions of the employment. It is important to know. So kung perma manggal na manggali perbahan kontrata dapat basahon jud do, basahon jud ang gi-state didto. Manang makabalo ka kung unsay kinahanglan man galing or unsay sayop sa mga issues sa mga management. So unions cannot charge excessive fees. Unions cannot try to get employers to punish workers for them if they do not support or join union. Unions cannot act as if they are the union for a workplace if they have not been properly certified. It is important to know your field na you are in ha. So unions cannot commit misconduct on the picket line by assaulting or threatening workers who cross the picket line. Unions cannot tell an employer who should be its bargaining representative. So the collective bargaining, it will tackled by Judy Ann Wanillo. She is one of the members in our group. So that's all for my video, and I hope you learned a lot in this topic. It is important to know the rules. It is important to know the conducts of every unions that you are in. So thank you and have a nice day.
So, good day everyone. This is the continuation of Anna Joy's report. Collective bargaining goals and purposes. So, collective bargaining is the process of negotiations between the company and representatives of the union. The goal is for management and the union to reach a contract agreement, which is put into place for a specified period of time. Once this time is up, a new contract is negotiated. In this section, we will discuss the components of the collective bargaining agreement. The terms negotiated during collective bargaining can include working conditions, salaries, and compensation. Working hours and benefits. The goal is to come up with a collective bargaining agreement through a written contract. According to the International Labor Organization, collective bargaining is a fundamental right for all employees. So, as noted above, the International Labor Organization states that collective bargaining is a fundamental right available to all workers. This means that all employees are entitled to present their grievances to their employers and to be able to negotiate them, and helps reduce inequalities in the workplace while providing workers with labor protection. So, collective bargaining normally takes place between members of corporate management and labor union leaders who are elected by workers to represent them and their interest. Collective bargaining is initiated when employee contracts are up for a renewal or when employers make changes to the workplace or contracts. These changes include but aren't limited to employment conditions, working conditions, and other workplace rules. Base pay, wages, and overtime pay, work hours and shift length, holidays, sick leave, and vacation time. Benefits related to issues such as retirement and health care. So the goal of collective bargaining is called a collective bargaining agreement. This agreement is meant to establish rules or employment for a set of number of years. Union members pay for the cost of this representation in the form of union dues. The collective bargaining process may involve an antagonistic labor, strike, or employee lockouts if the two sides have trouble reaching an agreement. So, collective bargaining steps. Collective bargaining can be an intense process that can be stressful and difficult for all parties involved. It often involves a lot of back and forths with offers and counter offers, but the end goal is reach an agreement. So the process goes through a number of stages. These steps can be summed as follows. identifying the issues and preparing the demands. This may include a list of grievances such as abusive management practices or low salaries. So negotiating. The union will hire a team of professional and negotiators to reach an agreement with the employer. The employer will also negotiators and the two teams will continue to meet until they find a satisfactory agreement. So coming to a tentative agreement, once an agreement is reached, both teams of negotiators will submit the agreement to their constituents. So at this time, any last minute issues will be raised as the details are hammered out. So accepting ratifying the agreement. The agreement will be submitted to union members who will have the opportunity to vote for against the new contract. Administering the agreement. After an agreement is finalized, workers and shop stewards will continue monitoring to ensure that the company is abiding by its obligations. So there are instances, though, where the parties involved can come to an agreement if the negotiation period expire without a collective bargaining agreement in place. Union representatives may suggest that workers go on strike until their demands are met. So employers, on the other hand, may decide to lock out their employees until a suitable agreement is reached. If they are locked out, employees have the right to pick it. In most cases, neither party wants to reach these points, which are considered drastic measures that are used as a last resort. So the main objective of collective bargaining is for both parties, the employees' representatives and the employer, to come to an agreement on employment terms. This is known as a collective bargaining agreement or a contract that includes employment conditions and terms that benefit both parties involved. So collective bargaining is a key means through which employers and their organizations and trade unions can establish fair wages and working conditions. It also provides the basis for sound labor relations. Typical issues on the bargaining agenda include wages, working time, training, occupational health and safety, and equal treatment. So the objective of these negotiations is to arrive at collective agreement that regulates terms and conditions of employment. Collective agreements may also address the rights and responsibilities of the parties, thus ensuring harmonious and reproductive industries and workplaces. So the role and purpose of collective bargaining from an employer's perspective, collective bargaining is only incidental to most employers' operations because the focus of an employer's activity is the production of goods or delivery of services, not collective bargaining. A mean to allow the employer to continue to conduct and control their business while establishing terms and conditions of work for their employees. From the union's perspective, collective bargaining is the core business of a trade union, along with the administration of the collective agreement that results, a means to limit an employer's discretion and expand the rights and entitlements of workers and the union, a method used by trade unions to improve the terms and conditions of employment of their members. According to Canadian auto workers, unions are shaped by what we bargain, and every round of bargaining influences our future bargaining power. Collective bargaining tends to improve the relations between workers and the union on the one hand and the employer on the other. So collective bargaining is a continuous process. It enables industrial democracy to be effective. It uses cooperation and consensus for settling disputes rather than conflict and confrontation. Employees negotiate contracts with their employers through their unions to determine the terms of employment, including pay, benefits, working conditions, hours, leave, guidelines for workplace health and safety, how to balance work and family, and more. Collective bargaining can be used to settle problems in the workplace. It is also the most effective way to raise wages in America. Indeed, unionized workers benefit from better compensation, better benefits, and safer worker conditions thanks to collective bargaining.